Hi, I'm Carlos Adams, and welcome to Chicano Studies 112. This is an introductory survey course dealing with the lives and experience of Chicanos and Chicanas. The focus of this course will be on issues of identity, how identity develops over time, and the ways and the things that influence, or the systems and beliefs that influence the development of identity. I think it's important because for Chicanos and Chicanas, coming to terms with our identities has been something that's been a very long and difficult process. As the course description states, we're going to take a look at issues of education, political participation, economic development, family, and gender. We're going to look at different theories and examples from an interdisciplinary perspective, meaning that we're going to look at it through literature, social theories, feminist theories, and history. We're going to take a look, and as we do, we're going to find that Chicanos are a mixture of various identities along lines of ethnicity, political participation, gender, sexual orientation, locations within class, and all these come together under the collective of Chicano-Chicana communities. So we're going to take a look at how these things work, how these things come to influences, because I believe it's important to understand identity. For many Chicanos and Chicanas, it's been a very long and difficult process in coming to terms with our identities. One of the ways we can take a look at identity is in the quotes that I handed out before class. So I want you to take a few minutes to write down what aspects of identity you think each example addresses. For Ruben Salazar, I think it's important to look at the very end of his quotes, that actually the word Chicano is as difficult to define as soul. Why is it so difficult? Why is it such a problem to come to terms with defining who Chicanos and Chicanas are? Why do so many Chicanos and Chicanas have trouble defining who they are as individuals? One of the reasons that we can see for this is if we take a look at Gloria's work. This mixture that's developed out of mestizaje, this combination of different cultures, different sexualities, different social beliefs, all coming together within the Chicano and Chicana, or all coming together to influence the development of Chicano and Chicana identity. She raises a key question. Is it important to be able to define what it is to be a Chicano-Chicana? Or is it more important to come to terms and be comfortable with an identity without definitions? Her ideas on a tolerance for ambiguity allow us to begin to understand this issue of mestizaje and how Chicano and Chicana identity may be unique and the various influences that develop identity, as well as the ambiguity that each identity addresses, or the way each identity works. We see in the issues of, say, gender and sexuality with Carla Trujillo's work, how she feels Chicana lesbians are identified by a larger heterosexual Chicano community. This idea of the greater threat, because they move to subvert male domination and raise the consciousness of other Chicanas, is an important aspect to think about when we talk about our issues of identity coming together. Can Chicanos and Chicanas find ways to work together no matter what our sexual orientations are? For Natasha Lopez, she brings in another interesting issue of ethnicity and sexuality. She asks the questions, which is more important, her sexual identity or her ethnic identity? Is she a lesbian who happens to be Chicana, or is she a Chicana who happens to be lesbian? By the end of the poem, we see her coming to terms that it isn't where she has to be one or the other, or one is more important than the other, but to find ways to bring the two together. When we look at issues of political participation, we can look at Moraga's work and her idea on how the students she's had of Mexican ancestry begin to take on a radical politics as they define themselves as Chicanos and Chicanas. It's important to remember that Chicano and Chicana is not just an ethnic term, but also a political term. So we'll take a look at Chicano and Chicana politics through the eyes or through the examples of the movimiento. We'll also take a look at 3 different approaches that I've written about when it comes to political participation. We'll look at Hispanic politics, which I define as accommodation in hopes of assimilation. This means that Hispanic politics and identity accommodates U.S. society in hopes of assimilating into U.S. society. We'll take a look next at Chicano politics. I define Chicano politics as reclamation in hopes of restoration. This means that for many Chicanos, they've begun the process of reclaiming their indigenous past, especially with the Aztecas of central Mexico. But they do so in hopes of restoring themselves to the top of the patriarchal pyramid. Remember, racism isn't just about oppression and discrimination based on skin color and ancestry. For Chicanos, there's also been an emasculation process, inhibiting Chicanos to achieve the very positive attributes of fatherhood, of an honorable man as the breadwinner. And we'll also take a look at Chicana politics that I define as reclamation in hopes of transformation. What I mean by this is that similar to Chicanos, many Chicanas have also began this reclamation process, reclaiming their indigenous past. But not in the hopes of gaining control or power over another group of people, as it is with Chicano politics. But more importantly, in the hopes of redefining the very definition and use of power and control towards a more egalitarian society. So we'll take a look in political participation, these different types of political approaches. We'll also take a look with this idea of my poem at Family Dinner at 6, and we'll take a look at interracial relationships and interracial marriages. As someone who had a father my mother knew for just a short period of time, and they were divorced a few years after I was born, I never seemed to be brown enough to be accepted by the Garcias, even though I spent my life growing up with them. But I never seemed to be white enough to be accepted by the Adams. So in that sense, I lacked something. Or did I really? Rather than saying that I wasn't brown enough to be accepted by the Garcias or white enough to be accepted by the Adams, maybe I really am what Rafael Perez Torres calls a site of overdetermination, where all that is Garcia and all that is Adams comes together within me. Maybe that's who we are as Chicanos and Chicanas, these sites of overdetermination of all that is what it is to be an American and all that it is to be a Mexican comes together within the Chicano-Chicana community. So we're going to take a look at these issues of identity throughout the course of this course, and see how this, if we come to a greater understanding of the lives and experience of Chicanos and Chicanas. So let's open it up now for some discussion and kind of take a look at these quotes and see what you have to say. Thank you. Bye.